Persona series. It's always that kind of game that I was afraid to admit that I never played. I mean, even people that aren't much devoted into video games play this game. So, in 2006, Bernie Chan decided, you know what, let's play Persona 3 Portable for once. Even though some people recommend me to play Persona 3 fast over this, I thought Persona 3 Portable was more suitable version for me, especially considering the PSP features of being able to put to sleep and return on the exact same point. It's great! At this point, I don't think Persona series need introduction. It's a spin-off series from Megami Tensei games, but despite being a spin-off, these games are the most successful Atlus titles not just in terms of sales, but overall, reviewers all over the place were giving great scores to these games. But why is that? Persona 3 had a whole different vibe from any other game at the time. Instead of being this big journey where you're constantly visiting new places, here you are always in the same city day by day, living your own kawaii Japanese fictional town where you can meet people, experience many different events, depending what time of day you are. So it never gets boring since every day something different happens in your daily routine. On top of that, during the night it's where the RPG elements lies, and this is where you have opportunity to explore dungeons of this massive tower called Tartarus. This was a very unique concept for an RPG for the time, but it wasn't just that. Persona 3 came out on the right time on the right platform. PS2 was about to be replaced with the PS3 with such large number of PS2 owners at the time that had an heavy influence on the sales. But like I said, there's no need for an introduction. At this point there's bazillions of reviews out there talking about Persona 3. So this is more like what I did thought video than anything else. So let's get into the game. Starting off the game, one of the biggest P3P additions is the fact that the game allows you to choose between a male and a female protagonist. This won't change much the overall story, but the social interactions you have with other characters, it's totally different and gives you a whole different perspective on characters that you didn't have the same social interaction with the male character. So this means replay value. But since it was my very first playthrough, I decided to go with my male protagonist. Both protagonists are silent, and the only words they say is when the characters ask you something, but that's all up to the player to decide what to say. It wants to be a more personal experience, so making a silent protagonist makes sense. And that's the key for this game. It's a very personal experience, even though it has some scripted moments that will happen to everyone who played this game. From the very beginning, the game gives you freedom to talk to different people, sign to different school clubs, hang to different places, etc. And creating friend binds in this game is very important, not just because you learn more about the characters, which by the way all have very interesting stories, but also they give you social links. Exploration in the PSP version is a little bit less relevant than the PS2 version, since it takes a more visual novel approach, which I all honestly didn't mind because it cuts the boring part of having to walk back and forth, and on top of that, by pressing square, it opens the quick menu to choose the location you want to go. But after spending all day doing all your social meetings, it's at night where the RPG elements of this game starts to kick in. Here you have to explore a tower that seems to be the source of these dark hours. Persona 3 has a very interesting turn-based system. It's a very simple but yet effective. You can use the main character to attack the enemies, but also you can use personas as well to use other types of attacks which are usually more effective. Sometimes they can cost you magic points or even health points. Another great addition of the portable version is the fact that you can actually control every party member. And even though I think the AI it's really good, but for tough battles it's really good they allows you to actually control all the characters, because sometimes the decisions that the CPU makes it's not always the best optimal decisions for certain boss battles. Personas itself, it's another interesting part of the game. It's pretty much your own Pokemon. Each character have their own personas as well, but only the main protagonist is able to store more than one persona and use that to exploit many different weaknesses. I really enjoy collecting personas, and the most interesting part of them is fusing them. While games like Pokemon, it's really hard to let go your strong Pokemon because they are strong. In Persona 3, the game encourages the player to fuse personas since level up takes way too long, and by fusing them you can have way stronger personas. While in the beginning I was afraid to fusing them, the game always allowed me to see beforehand what kind of persona I'll get before fusing them. And this is where your social links will be useful. So each time you fuse a persona, those social links will allow you to boost some levels on those personas. And this is why social party is a very important thing in the game. And later on, when you max up your social links in certain characters, unlocks ways to fuse certain specific personas which you wouldn't be able to do before. Another interesting twist on this battle system, it's able to exploit weaknesses. When you hit an enemy that has certain weaknesses, they get knocked down. If you manage to get all the enemies on the battle knocked down, means you can deal a massive number of damage by doing an all for in attacks. But this also leads to one of my major complaints. While I think it's fun to figure out enemies' weaknesses and whatnot, also figure out means that you kinda always have to play like that, or sometimes enemies can caught you off guard. A good example when an enemy uses one hit death attack, those type of attacks exist in other RPGs and they were never really an issue since they have very low hit rate, but for some reason in this game those death attacks happen way more frequently, which leads to frustration. Many times I've lost long hours of progression because of that, and you can't save during the dungeon, so you have to play very safely. But to be honest, dungeon crawling wasn't really my thing in this game. Most of the dungeons look really flat and boring, to be honest. While I enjoy trying new personas and figure out the enemy's weaknesses, the social part is what drove me to keep playing this game for countless hours until the PSP battery dried out. The overall story was pretty interesting with some really nice dark moments, despite the overall very colorful presentation and cheerful music, which by the way made me crazy to the point I couldn't stand anymore. Especially considering even the store songs are remixes of the same damn song. Don't get me wrong, it's great, but damn, I'm glad MP3 players exist. The cast is very interesting as well, and there are certain characters I wish I knew more about them. Maybe on the second playthrough with a female character things could be a little bit different. And that's the thing about this game, it has so much to offer that a single playthrough it's not enough to experience everything that the game has to offer, especially because there's some certain events that can be missed. And I couldn't talk about Persona without mentioning the fantastic characters design, especially the Persona designs. I really love those. It kinda remind me a lot Alice in Wonderland for some reason, and I really liked it. I must admit, by the end of this game I shed some tears, not because the end was sad, but I felt like I was saying goodbye to a very good friend. While video games, it's just video games. Persona 3 was a little bit more than that, was an experience, something that many developers struggle to do. Atlus created this very believable world that made me relate to my own kawaii Japanese universe, and I really enjoy every second of this game. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this long video, I guess. So again guys, thank you for watching, see you guys next video.